All right, so let's go over some practice problems involving implicit differentiation. So the first one we have, x squared plus y squared equals 64. So take the derivative of x squared, which will just be 2x, plus the derivative of y squared, which will be 2y. But here, remember to multiply by dy dx, since we're doing implicit differentiation. And this will be equal to the derivative of 64, which is just 0. And then we just subtract 2x from both sides. So we get 2y times dy dx is equal to negative 2x. And then we just divide both sides by 2y. 2's cancel. And then we just get dy dx is equal to negative x over y. Our next one we have x squared plus 4xy minus y cubed is equal to 6. Start off by taking the derivative of x squared, which will just be 2x, plus here we're going to use the chain rule, or the product rule, because we have 4x times y. So we take the derivative of 4x, which will just be 4 multiplied by y. Then we add 4x, and then we multiply by the derivative of y, which is just 1, but also multiply by dy dx. Minus the derivative of y cubed, which will just be 3y squared, but again, multiplied by dy dx. Which will be equal to the derivative of 6, which is just 0. Now we just solve for dy dx, just treat it like a variable. So we're going to essentially subtract this 2x and 4y. So let's do that first. Subtract the 2x and 4y. And then so on the left, we'll have a negative 2x and a negative 4y. And then on the left, on the right, we have negative 2x minus 4y. And on the left, we have 4x times dy dx minus 3y squared times dy dx. So you can factor out this dy dx because dy dx multiplied by 4x is there minus the 3y squared. So remember, like reverse factoring, it would just get us back to that. So then here we can easily see that we just need to divide by this 4x minus 3y squared on both sides. So when you do that, you just get dy dx is equal to negative 2x minus 4y all over 4x minus 3y squared. And that'll be your answer for that. All right, 79. Okay, so it looks like we got double product rule. Take the derivative of x cubed first, which will give us 3x squared. Hold the y as constant. Then we add this to x cubed times the derivative of y, which is just 1, multiplied by dy dx. I don't know why I made my dot so big. Don't let that dot confuse you. Then from that we subtract And again, we have the product rule again. Take the derivative of x first, which is just 1 times y cubed plus, this time hold the x constant, multiplied by the derivative of y cubed, which will be 3y squared, times dy dx. That'll be equal to the derivative of 4, which will just be 0. Now let's go ahead, let's subtract this 3x squared y, and then add the 4, and add the y cubed from both sides. So let's make the equal sign here. Subtracting this, we'll get negative 3x squared y on the right. And then adding this right here, plus a y cubed on the right. And then what we have on the left, let's factor out the dy dx multiplied by the x cubed here. That's what we got there. And then minus x times 3y squared dy dx. So minus 3xy squared. That's where that dy dx comes from. And then all we have to now do is divide by this group here. Divide by that group, we'll get x cubed minus 3xy squared in the denominator. And this will be your answer. All right, next we got the square root of xy is equal to x minus 4y. Okay, so here we're going to use chain rule. So think of this, I like to think of it as xy to the 1/2 power. Is equal to x minus 4y. So using chain rule, the derivative of the outside is 1/2 times xy to the negative 1/2 multiplied by the derivative of the inside. And that's going to involve product rule. So the derivative of x, which is just 1 times y plus x times the derivative of y, which will just be 1 multiplied by dy dx. You don't have to write the 1. I just do it just to make sure it's clear that I'm still taking the derivative. And that'll be the left side. And on the right side, the derivative of x is 1 minus 4 times 1, which is the derivative of y, times dy dx. So again, now I'm solving for dy dx. So let's see. Okay, so this is just square root. So let's just expand everything. Let's expand this. So let's be 1/2 times xy to the negative 1/2 times y plus a 1/2 a 1/2 xy, it's the negative 1/2 times x. And then here we have the dy dx. And let's also add this 4 dy dx to the left. So plus 4 dy dx, bringing that to the left side, is equal to 1. Now we can factor out this dy dx from these two groups. And let's simplify this. So this will be, I probably should have wrote, probably should have wrote it like this. So this will be 1 y over x to the 1/2 times y to the 1/2 plus 1x over, oh, I forgot this 2 here, whoa, over 2x to the 1/2 times y to the 1/2. And then let's factor out this. Oh yeah, so let's take out this dy dx. So adding 4 to this will be multiplied by dy dx. Remember, working backwards, we go from there to there. And then from that multiplied by that right there. And then we just need to subtract this and then divide by this. So this simplifying will just be 1. Simplifying this will be 1 over, this will just be the square root of y. Let's just do, so I probably should have wrote it like this in the beginning, but I like having powers. Anyways, so y to the 1 over y to the 1/2 is just y to the 1/2. So we just have the square root of y there over 2 times the square root of x plus this simplifies x to the 1 over x to the 1/2, y to the 1/2. So over the square root of x over 2 times the square root of y plus 4 dy dx is equal to 1. Let's expand this to the next part. So subtracting this, we'll get a negative, we'll get a 1 minus the square root of y over 2 times the square, my apologies, this will be equal, subtracting this, we have 1 minus the square root of y over 2 times the square root of x on the right side. And then we'll have dy dx times that. So then we just divide this side by this group. So that divided by the square root of x over 2 times the square root of y plus 4. Now this will be your answer, but you may have to go first. Now, depending on what your professor or teacher wants, maybe they want you to combine like terms, multiply this by 2 square root of x. over the square root of x, or 2 square root of x, and this by 2 square root of y over the square root of y. Flip it, multiply, and all that stuff. But it's not really necessary. That's just going to be the algebra part. All right, 2 more. Let's go over some trig ones now. All right, so here we have basically product rule that we just got to worry about. So the derivative of x, which will just be 1, times 1 times sine of y plus x times the derivative of the sine of y, which would be the cosine of y, times dy dx equal to, and now again we use product rule, the derivative of y, which is just 1 times dy dx times the cosine of x plus y times the negative sine of x. And now we just have to, let's subtract this from both sides, and let's subtract this from both sides. Just subtracting this and then subtracting that. So let's ignoring that for now. We'll have the cosine of y times dy dx minus this minus the cosine of x times dy dx. Looks like I need to get a new pen. Not a problem. Is equal to, and remember we need to subtract the sine of y from both sides. So equal to the negative sine of y minus y times the sine of x. And then factor out this dy dx from the left. So we're going to have dy dx multiplied by the cosine of y minus the cosine of x on the left, all equal to the negative sine of y minus y times sine of x. And then we just need to divide both sides by this. Dividing both sides by that, we'll get dy dx is equal to this whole thing all over the cosine of y minus the cosine of x. And that's all there is for that one. All right, just one more. Okay, this last trig one, we're going to use basically chain rule. So the derivative of the outside first, which would be the negative sine of x plus y times, let me put that in red, the derivative of the inside, which will be the derivative of x, which is 1, plus the derivative of y, which will be 1 dy dx, or just dy dx, equal to the derivative of x, which will just be 1. Then we can just divide both sides by this. So dividing both sides by the negative sign of x plus y. That falls away. So then we have 1 plus dy is equal to 1 over the negative sign of x plus y, or 1 plus dy dx is equal to 1 over the negative sign of x plus y. And then all we have to do is subtract this 1. So after we subtract that, we just get that dy dx is equal to 1 over the negative sign of x plus y minus 1. And that's really your answer. I mean, you can combine them and have common denominators. That's all you really need to do for calculus. So there you go. Hope that helps.